Good morning or good afternoon, whatever time you guys are listening to us. Welcome back to another edition of the Layman's AI podcast. I am Adam,
My name is Brian.
and we are here tonight, or good morning to whatever time you guys are listening. Again, had to say that again, Brian. But we're here for episode 45 of the Layman's AI podcast. And after last week, we decided we wanted to take a little bit of a pivot and talk about what's going on with OpenAI, what we know, what we're reading on the internet. OpenAI, which of course is also associated heavily with ChatGPT. Um, if your head's been in the sand in AI since December of 2025, you're probably hearing some negative things here and there about OpenAI and probably some positive things too. But we're going to talk a little bit about what we've been able to find about what's going on with OpenAI and ChatGPT, as well as what are some things personally we've noticed with them. As if you guys recall, ChatGPT was the first one that I went with the paid account. It was my first introduction into LLM. I still am holding on to my paid account with ChatGPT, but I now have a paid account with Claude as well. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why I'm doing the switching at some point tonight. But Brian, we want to go into some of the other details first before my personal experience. Now, I got to say, I have not given up on ChatGPT before we dive
Mhm.
into this. I haven't given up on it, but there's some things we got to talk about. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like we did a what did we do? We did an episode a little while back about the business of AI, and we talked
Yes.
about who has their hand in this model, that model, and everything. And it was really shocking to me. Like I knew there was a lot of let's say companies owning things on the back end of everything, but it kind of shocked me at how many um companies owned how or had investments in different models and everything like that.
Hmm.
And ChatGPT is basically the pioneer of the LLM, basically.
Yes.
And everybody knows OpenAI, ChatGPT, and everything. And when they started, people are like, "Yes, I'll give you money. Give me money. We got to invest in this. We got to invest in this." And investments coming in and investments coming in. And now we also did an episode on the AI bubble, and this might
Yeah.
be one of the biggest bubbles to burst right here. And we're
Certainly.
talking billions in losses right now and everything, and they keep investing in infrastructure, and they keep telling people, well, we need more infrastructure, give us more money. And now it's come to that point where it's like, okay, why am I giving you more money? And now OpenAI, I think they're basically flat-footed on answering that question at the moment.
Yeah. It's very important to them to fundraise, and we're going to talk about that because we're going to start. Let's start with the money, because Brian. And
Yeah,
at the end of the day,
dollars.
it's dollars. It's dollars. That's why you and I did this podcast so we could get rich. You know.
Yeah, I mean, an investment has to make dollars for it to make sense.
Yeah, yeah, just what you said there. Yeah. All right, so we're going to talk about some what we're going to consider the core financial mismatch of what's going on. What Brian and I are about to report, for those of you that keep up with AI, you're not going to hear anything you're not surprised about or probably haven't heard before. But for those of you that
Hmm.
listen to us with some things that we go over for the first time, if we're your primary source, thank you. For listening,
Yep.
and a lot of this stuff it's already been covered, but we're still bringing it up. So, as far as the financial mismatch goes, we're talking 1.4 trillion in infrastructure
Hmm.
commitments versus 20 billion in revenue.
That is a very, very bad.
Yeah,
I mean, when you have that low of a percentage of revenue compared to, how much you're spending, that's just I mean, yeah,
yeah.
I mean, that's just crazy. You can't run a successful business like that, and you can't keep asking for investors
So
for this. I'm thinking, you know, Sam Altman, he's going into Shark Tank trying to pitch an investor right there, and he starts shouting out these numbers, and I'm just picturing all five of them going like, "Why are you here? Why would you think we'd want to invest in this anymore?"
yeah, that's it's staggering. But here comes the craziest part: a projected billion or $14 billion in losses in 2026 alone.
Oof.
So you
Yeah,
have a
that's
$20 billion revenue, you're begging for money, and you're projected to get a $14 billion loss. We should let
yeah.
our listeners know that these $1 billion losses are not necessarily uncommon for
Hmm.
these big guys. However,
Hmm.
a lot of them they don't have the funding gaps, and I think we touch base on that later on.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it happens when you have the size of this company and everything. When you're going by percentages, it's probably not much different than I would say your spending percentages at home versus what
Yeah.
you're making in income, but you know you're just going to keep getting it back if you kind of keep your head down.
Hmm.
But still, a lot of money.
So this stat was one of the first ones where I looked at it. I said I wouldn't worry about that as much, but the compute spending,
Hmm.
a reset, it's about to be $600 billion by 2030 for OpenAI.
Hmm.
Um, the first reason why I wasn't too worried about that is we do know, for those of you who don't know, I guess we should, because we are the layman's podcast, I guess we should explain this. Each
Hmm.
and every time you put in a prompt, you're spending money, whether it's
Hmm.
yours, you have a free account, you think you're not spending money, you're spending their money. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's as low as $1, sometimes it's a little higher, sometimes it's significantly less than $1, but you're
Hmm.
spending their money. And every time you do that, that's what's costing all this money between the data centers, the energy, everything that goes into making these AI things work, these
Hmm.
tools, these great things. So all of that goes into that, and it makes it spending. With that being said, I actually think, and we have our first signs of this, spending is about to start going downward in trending as these models get better.
Yeah.
So while they can do more for us, it's not going to cost as much to make things happen. That's why that $600 billion thing by 2030, I'm going to go ahead and take that one with a grain of salt as a problem because I
Hmm.
think they've all got weird financial projections like that, that these massive $1 billion, hundreds of billions of dollars they have to reach by 2030 for the compute power. But I think they're going to continue to find ways to make the compute cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna basically have to figure that out and everything. I'm trying to read and talk at the same time, not always the best thing to do, but you know, this kind of like goes back to when I heard Sam Altman basically say that we're wasting so much money about people saying please and thank you to an LLM. And
Right.
this kind of brings me back to that. And how much is just being wasted by dumb prompting? Like if you add like a couple extra words, like a simple please and a thank you, isn't going to cost much per prompt, isn't going to cost much per question. But if enough of a percentage of people start saying please and thank you, it's just going to be like wasteful spending essentially. And that's something they don't really have control over, to be honest
No.
with you. Because I mean, you know, you can ask a simple question and it gives you a simple answer. But if you say please or thank you at the end of it, you're adding more costs to the same product that you're receiving. And these little things are just like seem to be adding up. And another thing that kind of, you know, I wonder if this is cutting into the revenue. Gemini. I don't pay for Gemini, but I use Gemini almost daily,
Hmm.
just to ask simple questions. And Google, it doesn't matter to Google because they have like so much funding backing them, and
Yeah.
they had so much infrastructure going into the AI game. And that's where I think Google had the advantage is like, okay, fine, we can do a free Gemini. It doesn't matter to us because we're making revenue eight
Right.
ways to Sunday.
The way I would explain that is Google's, funding treadmill, if you will. Google's
Yeah.
looks completely different than what OpenAI looks like versus what Anthropic looks like versus what Grok looks like.
Hmm.
Grok and Google, Grok and Gemini, that is, already has the treadmill. They've got funding from other sources coming in and out that they
Hmm.
can afford a little bit of a loss to make their
Yeah.
product better.
Yeah.
Anthropic just went about it differently, so their treadmill looks different. OpenAI was basically give me money, let me show you what
Hmm.
this thing can do. And let me tell you something, it worked at first. It
Uh-huh.
definitely worked because they have raised more capital than any startup in history.
Yeah.
Yet they still need more money. What
Yeah,
was the recent
it's
one? They're
hard
in
to like
talks to try
say
to
that.
raise $100 billion at an $830 billion valuation, and that was from the Wall Street Journal in January.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah, man, that is a lot. Um,
Yeah,
Trying to raise that much more money on top of what you've already raised
right,
when you're operating at a loss like this. Like you
right.
just keep operating at a loss, and like I said, if I'm a shark on Shark Tank, I'm saying I'm out. You know,
Yeah,
because
I'm not.
like you put these numbers together, you have to come like you have to. pay the piper eventually. And the piper's like just put his flute down and said, "No, I'm not playing no more until I get my money."
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the wall that we're running into. And you brought up Anthropic before. Claude is famous for limiting how much you can use it in a day.
Yes.
And that had to be probably it's their smartest decision that they made was to just make that
Uh,
limit and
yes.
everything.
I think Claude did two things, or Anthropic did two things that were fantastic.
Hmm.
Number one was the limit, and I think these are tied. I think they're equally important, but the limit you just talked about was very important, especially from a financial standpoint. And reality is finances make things go. What I am going to say is I also think they did a good job of focusing on consumer safety.
Hmm.
And now that is why part of the reason why they can take off because I think people trust Claude more than they trust other LLM devices.
Hmm.
And and we know that ChatGPT, excuse me, OpenAI has to do some fundraising pretty quickly. They are looking at doing an IPO in the second half of 2026. If you do not know what an IPO is, that's basically when you say it's an initial price offering. You have to go to the stock market, and they want people to invest in ChatGPT, invest in OpenAI.
Hmm.
This is a way historically where tech companies can become valued at insane rates. But
Hmm.
I still think even with a good IPO, I still think they've got a huge hole to fill.
Yeah,
But that will be interesting. Do I think the IPO could save them? Yes. Yes, I do. From the financial mess, I do.
maybe.
Yeah, I think it could, in theory and reality. I think it could because people like that stuff. Remember, I
Hmm.
know people who thought Google was a bubble.
Yeah,
We all know that wasn't
there
the
was a
case.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, we argued what was the better search engine, Dogpile or Google. Nobody remembers Dogpile.
nobody
I,
remembers
I, I
DARPA. I,
no, I was all about it because I had a dog on the search engine. I thought it was cool,
I
and
thought Yahoo was the best search engine.
yep, we all know what
Yeah.
happened there. So,
Yep.
yeah, the IPO. I don't know if this is an act of desperation or if this is a solid business move because it's going to be tricky to like see that down the road.
I'm worried it's going to get turned into an act of desperation, when in actuality, it's a pretty standard business practice, I think, for these
Hmm.
larger tech firms, because it
Yeah.
is easy money. And then every time you make an announcement about a new gizmo or a new feature or anything like that, your
Hmm.
stock goes up traditionally.
Yeah.
Uh,
Basically.
yeah. And ChatGPT, though not right now, but historically has done a good job of making these announcements. I mean, I remember at one time they seemed like they were bullying Google. Every time Google said Gemini could do this, they kind of like released the same thing within hours and said, "Oh yeah, ours could do it, and it's
Hmm.
better." And that's what I remember about ChatGPT when when it was really in its heyday. And I hate saying that already when it was in
Yeah.
its heyday.
I know, and I think like we were talking about before where Anthropic kind of limited your prompting so you wouldn't overuse it and everything. ChatGPT just said, "Yeah, go ahead and use it all you want, do whatever you want with it." And if they would have limited it at first,
Yeah,
they could have had a little bit of a slow there. But you're looking at revenue versus reality here. What we
yeah.
got 13 billion in revenue in 2025 and 900 million weekly active ChatGPT users.
That's according
That's
to CNBC.
hmm
And that's as of March 23rd, that article. So like that stat is like as fresh as could be.
Yeah, and when you're talking about 13 billion in revenue, okay, it sounds like a lot, but when you're asking for over 100 billion again, and you've been asking for money and people
Yeah.
have been giving it to you, that's not a lot. And 900 million weekly users, how many of them are paying for it? I don't know if we
I
have those stats or
I
not,
don't
and
know if
that's
we
like
have
kind
it,
of the
but I
thing.
remember seeing a stat. It's less than 20% are actually paying.
Yeah,
And I mean, I
so
must be one of the dupes I'm paying. Let me tell you something. I do feel I got my money's worth out of
hmm
ChatGPT. It saved me a
yeah,
lot of time over these last 2 years, um,
hmm
for sure. So do I regret it? No, not one
hmm
bit. But with that being said, if only 20% of those 900 million are paying a nominal fee,
yeah.
you're not exactly
You're
raising a ton of revenue on that one.
Yeah, you're not doing so good either. And, what was it, GPT 5 or 5.2 was the one
Okay,
that came out that everyone that a
that's where I
flop.
got to get personal.
Okay.
When 5.2 came out, I was very excited,
Hmm.
as always. And as I did my conversation with it, my normal prompting provided very good context. Not impressed with the results.
Hmm.
I actually thought it regressed a little bit. I really did. I said, this is not what I'm using. This is not what I have been using.
Hmm.
For me personally, it did not perform as well. And then I read something, well, you're supposed to do your context a little different. So I started doing it the way it wanted us to. That didn't work as well. Even
Hmm.
Flumped didn't work
Hmm.
as well. And I know we're going to get into this later, but like it couldn't follow simple steps to correct what it got wrong.
Hmm.
And that bothered me.
Yeah, that's not good. When
No.
you create a new model and it performs worse. And I think this all kind of goes back to the data scaling argument that I've heard before. The initial thought going into AI was the more data, the more data, the more data, the better. Like you just keep adding more data. You want it to get better, just add more data. Keep adding more data. And I've heard an argument saying, no, this is not a good idea because how much of that data is good data? And now, if you have right data or the correct data and mixed in with the incorrect data, now you have a conflict of
Yeah.
what the data actually is, and the machine doesn't know. Like I'm telling you right now, no matter how intelligent these AIs seem, they don't know what good data is versus bad data. They
Mm-hmm.
just know how to compute it and run it through its patterns and its progressions and everything and say, okay, yes, the most populated country in the world is Lithuania. And you're like, hold on a sec. That's kind of a personal one. I was doing a project for the class I took, AI coding boot camp that I took and everything. And we were trying to do some world population, meat consumption by country or what have you. And we found a data set off Kaggle, I think it was. And we said, okay, give us the 10 most populated countries because we didn't want to do all 500 countries or what have you. And number one was Lithuania. And I'm like,
Oh.
hold on a second.
Mm-hmm.
And in the top 10, this was the biggest giveaway was the Maldives.
Okay.
And,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay,
Uh, and I'm a
this
former
is,
social studies teacher, and I got to say, you are correct. That's a red flag.
yeah, and that's kind of like the first eye-opening right there. And the reason I bring this up is because we were running through the program, just doing our calculations, and the AI has no clue. It just knows what it's told, and it just does with data what it's told. It can do amazing things with data and like calculate it quicker than a human being can. But that right there was just the eye opener to be like, this is how easy it is to bring false data to an
Yep.
LLM here. You can just
Yep.
imagine.
Yeah. Uh, it blows your mind, and I do think they could be victim of that.
Hmm.
I do. And
Yeah.
can we
So
pivot a little?
how much
Pivot.
data is scaling? But anyway,
Let's
go
pivot a
ahead.
little bit and talk about Sora, which is another
Mm,
reason why I'm a little disappointed in OpenAI.
this was the big one.
This was big. This to me was a bit of a red flag of, oh, they're struggling. Like the
Yeah.
struggle is real.
Hmm.
The struggle is real at OpenAI. So for those of you who do not know, Sora is the video platform for OpenAI, ChatGPT, launched in September of 2025.
Hmm.
The goal was to capture advertising dollars, I think, from short form video markets, things like that. I meant that was mentioned that the source for that's Al Jazeera. And that, by the way, that's another
Hmm.
one that was like March 25th, 2026.
Yeah.
But it had problems. It had
Hmm.
problems right away with advocacy groups, academics raising alarms about deep fakes, which was legit. I mean,
Yeah.
when before Sora came available to the public, they had this video of a extinct woolly mammoth
Hmm.
trudging in the snow. And it looked as if it was as real as could be. And I thought that's what we're going to get to be able to make on our own. It sometimes didn't work that well. Sometimes it did. There was
Hmm.
tons of crackdowns right away of AI videos of like Michael Jackson and then the inappropriate Martin Luther King videos. There was
Hmm.
some very inappropriate Mr. Rogers videos. All of that, as we talked about last week, the AI slop.
Yeah.
Sora was probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest contributor to that. And now OpenAI said, done.
Hmm.
And Brian, how does that help them save a little bit of money?
That's just completely wasted money right there.
Hmm.
They just like they invested into this video app and it turned into complete garbage,
It was
to be honest
stealing
with you.
tons, not stealing, but it was tons and tons and tons of extra data pulled, like
Hmm.
extra money being pulled for the compute power. And
And
it
yeah.
still exists right now, but I don't know when the plug's actually going to be pulled.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. It got removed from the App Store, didn't it? I believe so.
I think so. I will admit I never used Sora in the App Store. I usually only used it on my PC when I needed it. For those of
Hmm.
you who do not know, Sora was actually the creator of our video intro on YouTube that Brian and I put together with the gentleman walking through the widgets and then looking at the layman's AI. That was all Sora uh, when we did that.
Yeah,
Uh,
just did a quick Gemini search. Sora is being shut down.
wow.
It's discontinuing effective April 26th. We're
Okay.
recording in March 30th, just for reference here, in case you're listening in July or something like that. But anyway, it's getting shut down, and that is not, I mean, that's just not a good look for them, to come out with this app and suddenly get it shut down,
No, I
uh,
agree.
which which makes me wonder what's going to go on. And we were talking, or I think we may have mentioned this before. There was a big investment from Disney,
Huge.
and that was like they had a 3-year deal announced and everything, and they were actually going to let their characters get used with Sora, and they were going to have Sora train the models so that people can create uh Disney AI content, which I thought was a really good move on Disney's part. You have to embrace this in some fashion, and if you don't, somebody's gonna do something with it, and they just went all in on it and just decided,
Yeah.
you know what, this is a good idea, which I did think it was a good idea for them to make this investment. And now suddenly it's not there anymore. So, um, yeah, this is going to be fun, to see
So
how where this goes from here.
I want to read more into the meeting between Disney and OpenAI because supposedly they met and it was like within 30 minutes of one of the meetings that they were having, Disney was blindsided by finding out that Sora was being shut down.
Hmm.
That was reported, but again, that was through who's the source for that? Al Jazeera, again, March 25th. But with
Hmm.
that being said, it did say an anonymous source familiar with the matter. And sometimes sometimes I don't even like to repeat that, given how many times in politics we've heard that being incorrect. Um,
Yeah.
but nevertheless, it would not shock me based on behavior of some of these companies before. Um,
Yeah.
it's crazy to me. It
Yeah.
is crazy to me. You need to fill a huge hole, and Disney, one of the largest companies in the world, was willing to give you $1 billion.
Yeah. And that really could have like added legitimacy to
Right.
this and everything, and just like generative AI. I know there's massive debate on what, is generative AI and what have you, or like if it's good or not, essentially. And we just recently did AI slop versus AI creativity, so you can listen to that episode too. But this was like one of the biggest first steps I thought, going into this. Like this could add some legitimacy to AI's capabilities is
Yeah.
on the generative market. But yeah, this is like not a good look for them.
It's not.
And
And personally, I'm a little hurt for two reasons. I had this great idea of using Darth Vader because I'm sure he would have been one of the Disney characters.
probably.
I was picturing Darth Vader with a teenage daughter and having to deal with her. Like, I really think there was something there. I really think there was something there in terms of AI slop that maybe
Hmm.
we could have done with. But
Yeah,
here's
I
my
probably could
other
have done that.
issue. I'm still paying the monthly for ChatGPT, and now I have a feature that I used on occasion completely pulled from me.
Hmm.
I'm not getting a reduced rate.
Yeah, that's
I That's not good. Do you remember what Joe Dirt said? It's not about you, it's about the consumer.
yeah, Joe Dirt, hillbilly, but he's got a kind of mentality. Yeah, when you're paying the same amount of money for less product, that's not a good business move right there.
And
Uh,
everybody's jumping on this now. I mean, you
Hmm.
remember with the whole, we touched briefly on this a couple episodes ago with the whole, uh, Anthropic wouldn't get along with the Pentagon and the government, so then they jumped to
Hmm.
ChatGPT and used that, and then people were mad at ChatGPT, so they swung over to different things, different LLM platforms. It is amazing to me how both Gemini and Claude, and I don't know if Grok's done this or not. I'm assuming they probably have those features that show you this is how you take your ChatGPT account, swing it on over here, and you have much of your data, a lot of MD files, but you have as
Yeah.
much of your data that we have about you as possible in terms of what your preferences are, and boom, you're ready to go. Uh, it was an
Yeah.
easy transition to Claude for me.
Yeah. I mean, part of me actually would rather just start off fresh, but I guess that's a consumer preference or anything like that. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Now with this being said, lawsuits are coming, and these are not low
Oh yeah.
profile lawsuits.
No,
These are
they're not. I
big,
mean,
big
the first big
lawsuits.
one was obviously the one with Elon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. And if you don't know the history, I don't know the full history, but Elon was on the board for OpenAI, and I'm not sure what kind of funding he put together or anything like that. I'd have to look that up. But he basically started this long time ago when OpenAI decided they were going to go for profit. And that right there, I'm not really sure how much of that is Elon just getting mad, how much of it is a rivalry between him and Sam. But you know, Elon can, his lawyers can hurt you even if they don't win.
Oh. Whether you like the guy or not, the man has money. He's got a very good legal team.
Hmm.
I mean, he's a force. Politics aside and all that stuff, the man is a legitimate business force
Yeah,
who you got to think twice on that one.
yeah, and he was one of the co-founders, the original
Yeah.
co-founders, and pledged 1 billion to a nonprofit, and everything. But this is where he started XAI and
Mhm.
everything, and that's how Grok came along or what have you. And you know, it almost like makes you wonder. And OpenAI has constantly said this is just harassment, essentially, to bring us down so that he can catch up.
It,
Um,
it may have been, but there was one key thing that I remember from that early on.
mhm.
OpenAI was supposed to be open sourced, and as
Yeah,
soon as they took that away, he was angry. Elon was angry. I remember that. I remember that, and I remember that's when the tweets started. I don't even know if they're called that anymore. What's an X
yeah,
called? They're not X's. I don't know. That's when the tweeting started
yeah,
from old Twitter. That's when everything started. It had something to do with them going from open source to non-open source,
yeah.
something like that.
So yeah, this was yeah, I'm trying to think of the right words to say this or anything, but an open source AI model. I don't know if it was ever open source. Um,
Yeah,
but this is where DeepSeek came in and everything, if you remember DeepSeek.
yeah.
And I just wonder if Grok actually started with whatever open source material OpenAI had available, and everything. And it's I mean it's hard to really decide whether this is Elon just being jealous or Elon just being competitive. Which he doesn't like to be number two. Hate him or love him, he just doesn't like to be number two.
Right.
But he's definitely taken it personally, I think,
Yeah.
and he's not the only one suing them.
No, he's not. There's
You
another company with deep pockets that have threatened to sue, I believe. Threaten.
hmm Yes, and that would be Microsoft.
Correct.
And if you don't know quite the full background, Copilot. We have kind of sang a few praises of them in the past because we kind of liked how some of their tools worked and everything. And they actually are built off the GPT model. A lot of people don't know that and everything. So they're kind of um, working hand in hand to build like kind of a product together, and that's part of where Elon's lawsuit came into play. Um, Said something about What was it? Misleading, or something like that. I
Hmm.
can't remember the exact details, but
Yeah,
it's definitely had influenced Elon in his lawsuit or what have you.
yeah,
But
and they've got other ones too.
mhm.
There's let me see here in our notes. Multiple simultaneous lawsuits, potentially hundreds of billions in combined exposure. And NVIDIA reportedly the $100 billion deal revealed to be non-binding and overstated.
Mm.
So that means that the money that they said they were getting, they didn't get it. Or
No. Yeah, that's
what's going on?
yeah, that one right there kind of gives credence to a lot of these lawsuits, especially because NVIDIA became one of the hottest hardware companies on the planet since
Yeah.
AI started exploding and everything. And there's all kinds of other things going on with what's going on with OpenAI, safety exodus. Um,
Oh my
you
gosh.
know, once you start taking out your safety barriers, that's not a good thing.
Yeah, and it's kind of well documented that they've done this or well publicized that they're low they've well, let's see. They've done dissolved its mission alignment team.
Hmm.
Um, Team leader elevated to chief futurist role. Critics call it consolation prize. Yeah, that's actually pretty funny. Um, chief futurist. I kind of like that term.
Yeah, I don't know. It
Uh,
sounds like a talking head position to me.
yeah, it does sound like a talking head position. Let's see what else we got here. Safety responsibilities folded into general roles. Um, Again, we don't have the inner workings of what is really going on there. So I'm going to say some of that is speculation, but what we do know is early on, a lot of people that were on these safety teams did abandon OpenAI pretty quickly and went over to Anthropic because of the lack of safety measures that they saw or thought that lack of safety measures they personally thought were should have been in place that sounded like ChatGPT or OpenAI was not willing to do. Um, so that's out there.
Yeah, I mean
That's part of their high
that's
profiles. The people that left.
yeah.
And I know I got the name somewhere here. Ryan. Oh yes, of course he's got a very long last name that appears to be German.
Biermeister.
Beermeister.
Yeah, we'll call him
We'll
Biermeister.
call him the Beer Man.
Yeah, if he's listening, you can come on our show and correct us all day.
Yes, we
We'll
would love
talk
to
to you.
hear from you, Ryan.
Yes,
Yes, yes.
yes, we would love to have anybody out from the OpenAI safety team on there. But yeah, that's a shameless plug anyway. Um, but yeah, the other one I think which kind of rubbed a lot of people the wrong way was the adult mode. We did a whole episode on adult
We
mode
did do a whole
here,
episode on it. Yeah.
and I think they pulled away from the video, but I wonder how much of that is because Sora is getting pulled away anyways. But either way, it's just like it just sounds creepy because now you
Eh,
could do like highly romantic novels, those dirty novels that are disguised as beautiful wording and everything.
well,
But
like fit like 50 Shades or something like that.
yeah, something like that. But
Oh,
yeah, either way, it's lot of internal concern, and when you have internal dissent like that, that's a sign of implosion right there.
yeah. And I think that goes to our next point or one of our last points that we're talking about. It's those. I don't want to say that people were upset about this, but it was broken promises to the users,
Hmm.
the paying customers. The hey, you're using this and this is coming, by the way. Oh, by the way, it's not coming. I remember OpenAI teased us with Strawberry, which was a thing previous to Sora. It wasn't video generated, but like it was like image, I think. But they teased for Strawberry for so long, and then I don't even remember what happened with it. Like I don't remember if it came out or if oh we just labeled it something different. Um, but I also remember the ChatGPT 4.0 that was a bit of a, I think we used the term fiasco.
Hmm.
And that was where they publicly promised plenty of notice before there'd be future model reveals. And son of a gun, they didn't do it. They just like announced it and gave you 15 days to say, hey, everything on 4.0 is gone. And 4.0 was a pretty well performing LLM in my opinion.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I'm like, what's next? Well, now I know it's Sora. Like,
Yep.
okay, so I'm using this stuff. but now I can't use this stuff.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly
what ends up
uh
happening? Yeah.
yeah, how this plays out, because you know, you remember the code red when they
Yeah, I didn't like
responded
that.
to Google and Anthropic. Like, we talked about this in a previous episode.
That was a
Like,
big one.
he issued a code
Yeah,
red, and
he code
that was
red.
worse than we thought.
Yeah, the code
Like,
red was my first warning sign of something's up. I
yeah.
think that was December, and he basically it. I don't fault the person for saying, "Hey guys, we're not performing at the level we should be performing at." I don't fault the
Hmm.
leader for saying that. I don't fault the company for that. I think it's a good thing to recognize where you're at. And they basically said we got to get our butts in gear so that we could catch up with Google.
Hmm.
Little did they know it was really Anthropic, but still.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, Google's
since
not a
the,
slouch in
oh,
the game
Google's no
either. Yeah,
slouch.
definitely.
I feel they
But
deserve their own episode, Brian.
yeah, that definitely. Maybe
Yeah,
we'll, yeah, maybe we'll write that down on the list. But yeah, that code red is really starting to come into focus now. I think, trying to wrap it up here. But that code red that they issued, maybe it was worse than we actually thought. At first we kind of played it off as like, oh, it's just like, hey guys, get your butts in gear. Let's get to work. And maybe it was him seeing the future and saying, oh,
So,
crud, this is
yeah.
bad.
I think the code red. Now I feel like there's a little bit of a clearer waters. I think the motivation behind the code red was much more of a if we don't get more innovative, we will not be able to fundraise at the rate we've been doing. People
Yeah.
are going to go to our competitors, Google, Anthropic, Grok,
Mm-hmm.
who have other revenue sources. I think
Mm-hmm.
that was the inspiration behind the code red. And since that time, it hasn't it hasn't worked in my opinion. Doesn't mean it's not
Yeah.
going to, but you know, uh, it's not looking good right now.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And kind of final thoughts here. I'm wondering if a company is just gonna straight up buy out Anthropic at this point. I would think I'm not like a business genius by any means, but I would say there might be some strong competitors to just buy OpenAI, and I almost say Microsoft could be in the works to buy them out.
That's possible. I
I,
would
I
not rule
mean,
that out,
I,
but
I'm
I
I'm not anytime soon, and don't listen to my speculation, but that is a possibility.
here's the positives that I have in the back of my mind. If I work at
Hmm.
OpenAI or if I am a fan of OpenAI, which I am a fan, I'm a fan, but I'm scared. I'm nervous for the future.
Hmm.
But they did just sign something with the government in terms of helping
Okay.
us with weapons. And it does
Yeah.
look as if the United States is going to be involved in a military conflict for the
Hmm.
time being. It could be longer. I don't know the time frame, but we know we're involved in a military conflict at this moment.
Hmm.
We're using their AI tools for military.
Yeah.
There's no way the US government's going to let that company fail if they deem those tools necessary.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one, especially how, heck, the U.S. government might be in play to just absorb them.
I
Um,
mean, we've labeled companies too big to fail before.
yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see if it actually gets to this point. This is kind of an extreme prediction right here, but it would not be surprising if, by this time next year, we're talking about the fall of an empire, essentially.
It would not. I don't think it's going to be like Enron collapse
Hmm.
because Enron just kind of happened, if I recall. But this one, the
That
writing's kind
was,
of on the wall. However,
yeah,
the stranger things have happened. Maybe the IPO will save them. I
yeah.
I
Who
wouldn't give up
knows?
on them because they are still the number one in terms of name, recognition,
Hmm.
usage. There, there's still good things happening,
Yeah,
but right now, their current operation, I don't see them turning the ship quick enough.
yeah. They something drastic has to happen, in short. But either way, I think that about wraps it up this evening.
Mhm.
I'd like to give a big thank you for everyone for taking your time out of your day to listen to us. My name is Brian,
And I am Adam.
and you have been listening to the Layman's AI, and we will see you next time.